Dear viewers, welcome to the Israel Watch. The Israeli occupation army's investigation into what happened in the Al-Aqsa Flood battle on October 7, 2023 was the main focus of the Hebrew media. Additionally, the Israeli decision to prevent any military forces from being present in southern Syria and the repercussions of occupying areas in southern Lebanon in clear violation of the ceasefire agreement and Resolution 1701 were also discussed. Joining us to discuss these topics is Mr. Khalid Barakat, writer and political researcher. Hello and welcome, Mr. Khalid, to this episode.
Hello and thank you for having me.
Roy Sharon, a prominent military commentator in the Hebrew media, raised a long list of questions about the army's investigation into Al-Aqsa Flood battle. He concluded that Netanyahu's cabinet must form an official commission of inquiry to understand what happened on October 7, as we will see.
כן, השורה התחתונה של תחקירי 7 באוקטובר ידועה מהרגע הראשון. מחדל ביטחוני עצום שלא היה כמוהו מאז הוקמה המדינה. אבל מאחורי המילה השגורה הזאת, המחדל ב7 באוקטובר, ומה הפרשנות שקיבל המידע. איך פעלו אנשי המודיעין ובכירי הצבא, כולל הרמטכ"ל, באותו לילה כשחמאס נערך לפלישה בהפתעה לשטח ישראל. איך הופקרו היישובים בעוטף עזה במשך שעות ארוכות, ומדוע לא הצליח צה"ל למלא את ייעודו בהגנה על אזרחים? מדוע היו חסרים כוחות בגזרת עזה, ואיפה היה חיל האוויר בבוקר ההתקפה? התחקיר יענה גם על שאלת הקונספציה. איך חלחלה ההבנה בישראל שחמאס לא מעוניין במלחמה אלא חותר להסדרה, וכי סינואר הוא בכלל מנהיג פרגמטי שניתן לרסן אותו באמצעות הכנסת פועלים וכסף קטרי? ואיך בושל תרגיל ההונאה שטמן חמאס לישראל בתקופה שקדמה לטבח? ובשורה התחתונה שתיכתב באותיות קידוש לבנה, מה צה"ל צריך לעשות כדי שמחדל כזה לא יתרחש בעוד שנתיים או בעוד 50 שנה. אבל כדי לוודא שאכן כך יהיה, לא יהיה די בתחקיר הצבאי, בשביל זה נהיה חייבים גם ועדת חקירה ממלכתית.
Mr. Khalid, to begin with, what is your opinion on the many points that were, or the many questions that were highlighted by Roy Sharon, and here I highlight especially those regarding the failure of occupation soldiers in confronting Hamas fighters and in protecting the settlers and even the Zionists who were present at the scene?
Well, we have to remember that this is an Israeli army investigation. This is not an independent commission that looked deeper into what happened in October 7th. There is an acknowledgement of a total failure on the part of the Israeli army, and as you know, there was resignation, including the Chief of Staff Halevi and others who resigned in taking the responsibility of their failure on October 7th. But this is still the official investigation of an Israeli army.
Yes.
The independent commission that they're requiring now to be composed in order to look at what really happened on October 7th will also not have all the details. The only people who really know what happened in details on October 7th is the Palestinian resistance, because they are the one who conducted this operation. They are the one who have real accounts and facts of what took place. But they did acknowledge that there were a total defeat of the so-called Gaza, units, the failure on the intelligence part. And what they don't acknowledge is actually that Israel is guided by a racist approach to the Palestinian resistance. They did not anticipate
right-wing extremist.
And racism, and it's structured racism within the Israeli army, that Palestinians are not going to be able to conduct such operation of that scale.
Exactly.
Their eyes were fixed on the southern front, Hezbollah and the Lebanese resistance, that they might be able to do something of that scale, but they did not.
But what will be the political repercussions of such a report within the Israeli entity?
Oh, it's going to be devastating. It's going to be devastating for the Israeli army.
Because the detailed one is not yet published.
It's not, and it will always be missing the Palestinian narrative and Palestinian story.
Yes.
Because what really they're basing some of these findings on some confessions that they got from from Palestinian prisoners under torture. Yes. Some of Hamas commanders who were captured later on, they say that they confess and they give some information. Israel really did not do any real investigation so far on what happened on October 7th.
On another note, Israeli social media was filled with reactions to the army's investigation into the events of October 7. Israeli activists directed accusations at Netanyahu himself, such as Shay Levy said, "The political leadership bears full responsibility. However, the army's attempt to portray itself as being forced into a disastrous situation is incorrect. The army ignored the failure of officers and soldiers in confronting Hamas fighters, in protecting military bases, and in safeguarding Israeli civilians." Ishai Haas said, "The Israeli army's investigation could have ended with just two words: the wrong concept. Who is responsible for this wrong concept? Who created it? It's Netanyahu." Dudu said, "The conclusion of the Israeli army's investigation, Netanyahu is the head. Netanyahu is the culprit." In your opinion, Mr. Khalid, this widespread criticism of Netanyahu on Israeli social media, how do you read that?
I read that as part of the Israeli division and the mistrust that it's between the political ranks and the military ranks. The military is trying to blame Netanyahu, and Netanyahu is saying, "Well, I'm not responsible."
They're holding him responsible for the failure,
Well, he is.
for the failure in Al-Aqsa Flood battle, not only
Yes.
October 7.
He is responsible as the prime minister of the Zionist entity of Israel. But the army and the intelligence community is always also responsible. But this reflects the mistrust that it's happening and deepening in Israel between the political ranks and the military ranks.
Moving to Syria, where the occupation forces continue their aggression, seizing lands in southern Syria after Netanyahu's threats against the new government about sending any military forces to the area. Hebrew media focused on this issue, revealing Israelis' objectives, as we will see.
למה צריך לעשות את זה? כי אנחנו רוצים שדרום סוריה לא תמשיך להיות אויב, ובשביל שהם לא יהיו אויב צריך לתמוך בדרוזים בג'בל דרוז, בדרוזים במורדות החרמון, ולשים את הגבול באופן שמאפשר להם אוטונומיה דרוזית.
אוקיי, אל תיכנסו איתי לרזולוציות האלה, אני רוצה לדבר יותר רחב. זה עוד ביטוי למזרח התיכון החדש שמתהווה כאן, כשאנחנו בעצם קובעים את הכללים מחדש עד דמשק.
ודאי, זו אמירה מאוד משמעותית שלו, זה אומר גם אכיפה. זה אומר, אנחנו יוצאים רצועה של עד 40 קילומטרים שאנחנו לא נותנים לשום חמוש להיכנס לשם, וזה אומר אכיפה, וזה אומר הרבה יותר כוחות. רק נאמר, בקו עכשיו אנחנו מחזיקים 3 מפקדות חטיבות של צה"ל שמחזיקות את הקו הזה, ואם אנחנו ניישם את מה שאומר ראש הממשלה, אני צריך הרבה יותר כוחות והרבה יותר בעומק.
Mr. Khalid, the occupation wants to disarm southern Syria, as we have seen also in the report. What are the Israeli objectives in taking this step at this time specifically?
Well, this is a very clear example of what Israel is about.
Yes.
As an expansionist entity, as an aggressor in the region, and that they want to occupy Syrian land, not just the Golan Heights that they think that Trump have given it to them, and now it's beyond discussion.
Under the pretext of protecting national security, even though the Syrian side or the Syrian government highlighted and clarified that we don't want any battle. We don't want to be at war with the Israeli entity. Yes. But yet the Israeli entity, as you're highlighting, has this expansionist
Even the words and the names that they're using for these areas, including Jabal al-Sheikh, calling it Harmon Mountain, all of that, Israel is looking at this area not just to be bargained on or to be negotiated. What they want is an actual occupation of southern part of Syria.
Yes.
They think that they can do that and they can get away with that just like they did with the Golan Heights, and but this is creating a reaction on a popular level from Syrians who are rejecting this.
However, on the topic of Syrian Jews, a military reporter in the Hebrew media claimed that job requests inside Israel came from the Syrian Jews themselves, and that Tel Aviv was keen to fulfill these requests.
למעשה, מנסים בצה"ל להכין איזשהו פרויקט יחד עם משרד הביטחון שבמהלכו ייכנסו עובדים סורים לעבודות ברמת הגולן. בהתחלה בשטחי רמת הגולן בעיקר בחקלאות, אבל בהמשך להרחיב את זה, וממש בימים אלו בצה"ל בוחנים את סדרי הגודל של ההיענות שתהיה לפרויקט הזה. בעצם אוכלוסיות מסוימות של סורים שנמצאים סמוך לגבול ייכנסו, יעבדו כפועלים ממש בדומה למתווה של פועלים פלסטינים ויחזרו חזרה. בצה"ל מקימים עכשיו מעטפת לכניסה וליציאה ולהבטחה של כל הדבר הזה, וכמובן הדבר הזה מגיע על רקע בקשות חוזרות ונשנות דווקא מדרוזים לצורך העניין ברמת הגולן שמבקשים לבוא לאיחוד משפחות, לעבוד בישראל, מה גם שההתבססות הישראלית בסוריה קצת מגבילה על העבודות במרחב הגבול, והם מעדיפים להגיע לישראל כדי לקבל פרנסה טובה יותר.
What's your opinion on the Israeli military's reporters claim that Tel Aviv met the request of the Druze inside Syria, taking into consideration that the protest against the occupation, against the Israeli occupation inside Syria happened from the Druze and the non-Druze in the south?
This is a classic colonialist approach. Whenever they occupy a land or colonize an area, they always justify or try to justify this by protecting some minority or protecting some people in the region. And that's why when the French, for example, colonized Syria, they say, we're doing this for the Christians of Syria. And then the Christians of Syria went out and protested that and say, you are not doing this for us, you're doing this for your own.
Complete denial.
Absolutely. And this is really... this is exposed. Really, this is an old-fashioned, classic colonialist approach. Israel used the Druze, as a reason to say that we're doing this for you, and we saw the reaction of. But
there might be part of the Druze that wants this collaboration with the Israelis,
and that's what they use.
We have to be objective here.
Absolutely. Like, for example,
we cannot generalize.
What I mean is that they will use certain voices that will claim that they represent this minority or that minority.
But even those are minorities, those.
I mean, didn't Israel say that we are invading Lebanon at one point of time to protect Christians, when many Christians were fighting the Israelis in the National Liberation Front or in the resistance? And this is just a classic colonialist approach in order to say that they're doing. How come they didn't do that before? Why now all of a sudden they have a conscience about what's happening with the Syrian Jews and the Druze and others, when really nothing was reported on any Syrian Jews being prosecuted because they're Jews anywhere.
And there is also discussion inside the report about a project being prepared by the Israeli Ministry of Military Affairs to arrange the entity of Druze workers into the occupied territories, and that's also to arrange the entry of Druze workers into the occupied territories.
Because they want to utilize these individuals and some of these sects in order to serve the colonialist project, the occupation. I mean, we saw that in Palestine when Palestine fell under the British colonization in 1917, and later on when Israel was established in 1948, they have used, Palestinian Jews who were never prosecuted on any level in Palestine to serve the Zionist project. And yes, they will find not just Jews, they will find Muslims from all sects to be utilized in order to serve their masters.
Why did they choose the Druze specifically?
Because of the relationship with the Druze in Palestine, who are to a great level, they have connected themselves to the Israeli project because they feel that as a minority they have to always obey the authority and be kind of an ally to any authority that comes. Well, now we have youth in the Druze community in Palestine rejecting serving in the Israeli army.
On another note, Zionist activists on Israeli social media reacted to the occupation in southern Syria with many comments, including the following. Zivi Hayani said, Syria will be under Israeli control and filth is the last thing we need there. Lakahim said, as an expert on Syrian affairs into how many parts will Syria be divided, do the Jews there want Israeli protection, or do they want an independent state with or without the Kurds? And how will the game in southern Syria unfold with the radical Sunnis. However, Lohim Herut said, not a single Alawite should be left alive. The Alawites hosted Hezbollah and Iran, and they prepared a northern front to destroy Israel. Mr. Khalid, first of all, I would like you to comment on these social media tweets. How do you see this? How do you see the reaction?
Well, notice that the only one who's talking about sects, Alawis and Sunnis, are the Israelis.
Yes.
I mean, even the official Syrian government today in Damascus
is not speaking about that.
Is not speaking about that because they know that this is rejected by the vast majority of people. People don't want to.
We haven't even heard anything concerning the Alawite from the Syrian government against the Alawite.
But Israel and the United States is playing these dirty games in our region, which is the sectarian wars.
Okay.
And they feel that this is the best equation to use in order to divide what's already divided and to make people, push people against each other.
Okay.
I mean, we have seen this for the past 15 years. If people are not going to see through this in a very clear way, I don't know when they are going to see it. I mean, this is a Zionist Israeli propaganda.
And they're saying it as clear as possible.
Yes, absolutely.
Yes,
and
very vivid and very
even
clear.
Even their logos is like including Syria and Jordan as part of greater Israel.
Yes. Moving from the occupation of lands in southern Syria to the occupation of lands in southern Lebanon, where Hebrew media raised concerns about the possibility of Hezbollah attacking the occupied sites later, as we will see.
נזכיר קודם כל שבשבוע שעבר ישראל עוזבת את דרום לבנון, זה הסיכום עם האמריקנים, אבל 5 מוצבי קבע נשארים בשטח דרום לבנון, ואפילו האמריקנים אומרים שישראל תישאר בשטח עד שממשלת לבנון תעשה את העבודה ותטפל בחיזבאללה. כלומר, גם בארצות הברית כרגע לא מגבילים את הנוכחות הישראלית הזאת, ספציפית הזאת, בדרום לבנון. אנחנו מדווחים הערב שבימים האחרונים, בשלל דיונים, הערכה היא שבשלב מסוים חיזבאללה יחליט כן לפגוע במוצבים האלה או לנסות ליצור תקריות כאלה ואחרות בסביבות המוצבים האלה. נגיד, בשלב זה חיזבאללה אנחנו לא רואים אותו מנסה לפגוע במוצבים או מנסה ליצור אירועים סביב אותם מוצבים. כנראה הוא נוטה לנסות להוציא את ישראל משטח דרום לבנון וגם להוציא את המוצבים האלה, אבל הנחת העבודה בישראל כפי שזה עולה בדיונים האחרונים שזה לא לנצח, ובשלב מסוים חיזבאללה כן ינסה לפגוע במוצבים, ליצור מעין תקריות סביבם. מתי זה יקרה אף אחד לא יודע, אבל הנחת העבודה אומרת שמתישהו זה כנראה יקרה.
Mr. Khalid, what's your opinion on the Israeli commentator's statement saying that America does not oppose that Israel stays in these 5 strategic points inside Lebanon, though the United States is part of the committee monitoring the implementation of the ceasefire agreement?
Yes, this is a very important question because we always have to look at the US and Israel as one party. The mistake is to look at the United States as a broker or mediator. The United States is never an honest broker or mediator. The United States will adopt the Zionist position fully. And that's why we see this identical position, and even U.S. envoys who comes to Lebanon adopting, the Israeli discourse on a 100% scale.
And presenting themselves as mediators.
Yes, this proves that the resistance was right all along to say that Israel is an expansionist. Israel wants more land. And without force, Israel is not going to leave these posts and these areas. But more importantly is that who is going to drive these Israelis from these 5 posts? It's the resistance, and it's the only path that could achieve that. We saw that this is the example that the Lebanese Islamic resistance have proven in 2000 when they liberated the south, and no one is going to drive these Israeli occupation forces outside of Lebanon except the resistance and the people of the south.
Do you think this American support for the occupation in southern Lebanon will actually give the enemy the ability to even expand its aggression against Lebanon and not only stick to the 5 strategic points?
I don't think so. I feel like the United States and Israel in our region and even worldwide, when you look at their behavior, they're really not doing this out of being powerful. I feel like they're doing this because of their weakness, and they're trying to cover their internal weakness. I mean, there is an empire that is shrinking, and we saw what happened yesterday with the episode with Zelensky and Ukraine. I mean, it's just an empire in falling, and then it's going to take all of their allies.
And they have no problem to actually make it clear to the public what they think and how they act. They're making it very vivid.
Absolutely, and they're not just occupying Syrian land and continuing on occupation in Palestine and in Lebanon. They also are trying to maintain their control over the Mahwar Salah ad-Din in Gaza and the Philadelphia. And this is actually an aggression against Egypt.
Additionally, an Israeli social media activist commented on the funeral of the leader of the martyrs of the nation, Sayyid Hassan Nasrallah, criticizing the chief of staff of the Israeli army for not bombing the mourners as Netanyahu wanted. Here, Carmela Harmobi said, "I remember Nasrallah's funeral when the weak chief of staff of the Israeli army failed to carry out a major attack that Netanyahu was pushing for with all his might. We must replace the senior leaders in the Israeli army." Moving on to Hamas, which knows exactly how to negotiate with the Israelis through mediators, while holding firm to its red lines until the last moment. This has raised questions in the Hebrew media about how Netanyahu can achieve his goals in the negotiations, as we will see.
כן, מילה אחת, קודם כל בנושא הזה של חמאס, עדיין מקודם, אני חייב לומר, בסיפור הזה, בסוף התנועה הזו, זו תנועה שיודעת לדקדק על קוצו של יוד, זו תנועה שבמשך שנים ניהלה איתנו מסעים ומתנים, משליט דרך מסעים ומתנים אחרים, תמיד הייתה עקשנית, תמיד הייתה ככה, אתה יודע, עמדה על הכל, ממש על קווים אדומים וכיוצא בזה, והפעם היא באמת מפגינה התנהלות אחרת. ועדיין, וזה עדיין, אני חושב אולי השורה התחתונה החשובה ביותר, אם מישהו בישראל באמת מאמין באיזושהי צורה שאנחנו נראה את חמאס מוותרים על אותם קלפים, על אותם חטופים שלנו, וממשיכים את השלב הראשון עוד ועוד ועוד, הרי לא רק שהוא טועה, אני חושב שהוא בעיקר משלה אחרים. כי הדבר הזה לא יהיה, ויכול להיות באמת שאנחנו באמת הולכים לקראת אולי חידוש מלחמה, בהנחה באמת שישראל לא מוכנה לתת לחמאס את מה שהוא כל כך רוצה, וזה את השלב השני, וזה את הפסקת המלחמה.
Well, the Israeli commentator spoke about Hamas intelligence and a strict management of a negotiation by holding firm to its red lines. In your opinion, what is driving the Hebrew media to actually shed the light on this topic specifically?
Because they are in denial. They are in denial of the scenes that is coming out in a real way in front of the world.
Yes.
The resistance in Palestine have shown that they are organized, that they are capable of administrating Gaza, that the military strength of the resistance is still intact. There is a control and command leadership. The resistance is committed to the agreement, and they are implementing it precisely as it was agreed upon. And yet Israel is violating every article of the agreement.
Okay.
Also the images that it's coming from Gaza, they don't want this because it shows that
it's provoking.
It's but this is the resistant way of sending messages to the enemy and to the friends.
Yes.
To the friends that we are capable of conducting our struggle in Gaza and that we have the support of the Palestinian people in Gaza. And to the enemy is that you failed. You failed in breaking us. You failed in raising the resistance, and you failed in liberating your soldiers without paying a price. And that is the liberation of the Palestinian prisoners.
And you were forced to actually go to that decision.
Absolutely.
Okay. Mr. Khalid Barakat, Palestinian writer and a political analyst, thank you very much for joining us in today's episode. Dear viewers, our time is up. Thank you for watching.